worked as a collaborative organizer with Dr. Greg Firn, and I welcome him to the panel. All right. All yours, sir.
All right. Very, very kind of you. Thank you. So as Mike said, Dr. Greg Firn, I had a life before RoboKind. I spent 35 years in public education and a failed retirement. So I get to work with Richard and a great team down in Dallas. But most importantly, I spent in those 35 years, at least a third of that was as a superintendent of schools. So not only as a decision maker, but one who was responsible for providing the highest quality education we could, especially for our students that were IEP dependent and were differently able. So that was extremely important to me, which is why it led me to RoboKind. I'm privileged and honored to represent RoboKind. And this will be the last part that sounds like a commercial, and it's not really meant to be. But the passion, for those of you who have been with us all day, the passion that you have heard, the conviction that you have heard from our speakers is really because of the life-changing impact that we get to witness on a day-to-day basis. The stories that we hear from parents, and we're so thankful that we have parents joining us for this panel discussion, are short of amazing. I can't imagine being the father of four not having heard my children speak or initiate and engage. And we're privileged to hear those stories of parents hearing their children speak for the first time who haven't spoken for 5, 6, 7, 8 years or more. That's just absolutely amazing to us. It's life-changing. Well, today's panel is comprised of industry leaders, both in education as well as private and public sector. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to have a couple of different questions that we'll be posing to them. And it's going to be very candid. We will leave ample time for questions. So as the panelists are going to introduce themselves in just a moment, what I'm going to ask them to weave into their introduction of self is really, from their perspective and experience, what challenge are they working on currently in the area of either autism or engineering, robotics, or a combination thereof? And how is their work addressing that challenge that they've identified? How is their work trying to solve that challenge that they've identified? And how are they trying to eliminate that challenge, if possible, that they're currently working on? So I would like to ask our panelists, as they prepare to introduce themselves, to be thinking about that. And I'm going to ask, who would like to go second? Okay, so because you would like to go second, you get to choose who goes first.
So do I go now or do I wait to?
It's all yours.
So my name is Thierry Karsenti. I'm from University of Montreal. I work mainly in the field of education, and we do have many projects where we look at how robots help kids who have a variety of learning difficulties, challenges, how it's possible for them to enjoy school and also to learn a variety of skills at school.
Great, thank you.
I'm Bridget LaMarche. I'm the parent of a child with high-functioning autism. He is in the Newton Public School System, and our challenge right now is trying to work with him to better understand social cues so that he can actually learn and spend time in a classroom with other students.
Great. So Lauren, joining us from the space station.
You got the Matthews? Stephanie.
Oh, Stephanie, I'm so sorry. Would you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so I'm Stephanie Walsh-Matthews from Ryerson University in Toronto. And the research goal, of course, is to have a better understanding of the speech practices of children with Autism spectrum disorder. And to do that, we're using robots. And so we're also investigating what human-robotic interaction might do to various elements of either language or more broadly, just interaction, generally speaking. So the challenge, of course, is how do you do that? And how we've addressed it is by just modifying the various research questions as we have great opportunities to interact with kids from different sectors and different backgrounds.
Outstanding. You and I need to connect because we are doing a lot of work across the provinces in Canada, so we'll have to connect. All right, Dr. Crowe?
Tracy Crowe, School Superintendent in Massachusetts, soon to be in New Hampshire, I believe. You'll see. But my strong interest has always been in the use of technology in general to provide equal access. It's about equity and access for all. So robotics was just a natural consequence. That was my next frontier after the distance learning. And I'm inspired today by everything I've learned.
All right, I'm Richard Margolin. I'm the CTO and co-founder of RoboKind. Right now, I'm really working on kind of two different things. On the robotics side, we're starting to look at developing a next generation Milo and set of robots, and we're starting to analyze what new sensors and sensing can we put in the robot that can kind of give us better feedback and better data, and what can we do with all the additional processing like live emotional recognition and things like that that we can add to our current course to make our curriculum and the robot more interactive, more adaptable, and better at kind of working with individuals on its own with even less kind of supervision from paraprofessionals.
That's great, thank you. So I think everybody can see we've got a tremendous panel, and we're very excited. So this next question is kind of a double question, so there's two parts to this. And the first part is, what has become, from your perspective and experience, what has become clearer or more evident about autism? So what has become more clear or evident about autism? And for those of you that are not directly involved with autism, I will throw the other side of the question, which is what has become clear or evident about technology as it's being used in the field of autism? So what has become clear or more evident about autism, or what has become clearer or more evident about technology and its use in the area of autism? So Dr. Matthews, would you like to go first on this one?
I can try. I'll happily try. So the first question, what's become more clear or more evident in terms of autism spectrum disorder? Well, I think that one of the things that we highlight every day in our research, and one of the spiels I give any of the students who decide to come and work on the project, is that we actually don't know very much, but we know enough to be able to move forward positively. So I think that we've garnered enough information about good practices either in school settings or centers, and enough respect and understanding of the people who spend a lot of time with the children that we know now to take our lead from the people who work with the children primarily, and that our research questions don't take over the good day-to-day practices that have already been in place. So I think that's one thing. I know it doesn't sound like very much, but I think it's been, critical for our community partnerships with the various centers to continue the way that they have. One thing that we do know about AASA is that there's quite a bit of flexibility in learning as well. It's one thing that we've kind of uncovered. So we can't, as much as we know that we have to respect the research that's been done before us, it should not inhibit us from trying things regardless of what the hypothesis previous to what we tested might have said. And that means that we should experiment with design, but always in respect to what I said first, which is to pay a great deal of respect to the practices of those who work day to day with the children themselves. One of the things that I can say that about the technology and what's become clear and more evident is that the technology will continue to change, and with that we have to be adaptive as well. And there are no gimmicks or tricks, much like in any educational setting. There are only tools through which we get better understanding of children. So I deal with a lot of parents, of course, and there is always this hope that there's a solution in providing technologies, and I think that we have to be careful too to say that they're not solutions in themselves. They're just new innovative ways to look at a question for which many other questions keep arising. So I hope that I haven't been too ambiguous, but I would say that what we do know is that we still don't know very much, but we know enough to continue forging ahead, and that robotic interaction when it comes to ASD is actually a very, very valuable source for uncovering very new things and very informative things.
Great, thank you. We won't let the universities state that we don't know what we don't know. So
No,
we now know what we don't know, which is really critical.
no, yeah.
It's critical. So from a parent perspective, what's clear to you about autism in your journey as a parent of an autistic child or an ESD learner?
Well, two things are clear to me is that there's no child with autism that's like any other child with autism. They are completely different creatures with some very similar threads, but you can't group them easily. The other thing that I've personally observed through dealing with my child in all of the groups that we're part of and the programs we engage with, these kids engage with robotics in a way that they don't engage with anything else. It's almost like they're better at communicating with machines and robots than they are with people. There's something that's taken out of the equation that doesn't frighten them as much. It's not as complex. There's something simplifying about that engagement that allows them to learn things better. If my son could not play soccer. Could not play soccer. We made a robot that plays soccer, and the kid can play soccer. It took us 6 months. It's like this magical thing that happens if you take this role-playing kind of thing and attach it to a machine that happens. And I don't know why or how, but it does.
That's great. Thank you. So from the perspective of education, Dr. Crowe, what's become clearer about autism and also what's become clearer about the use of technology with autism?
I think that from an educational perspective, just to piggyback on what Bridget has just commented on as a parent, what's very clear to me is there's the societal awareness about autism that we did not have previously. I think that's all good with the addition of a student, ASD student on Sesame Street, for example, or The Good Doctor, or just bringing an awareness so there's less of a fear and a misunderstanding of the what I don't like to call a disorder. I'm with the deaf community. I would prefer to think of it as maybe a differentness, but not a disability. I believe every student learns in their own way. I think everybody ought to have an IEP, but that's another story. I think in terms of technology, I absolutely agree with what our parent member has said because I've seen it myself. Just in the demos that we had for Milo alone, to see regular ed students with the special ed students interacting with the robot, and the special ed students telling the regular ed students, no, hold on a minute, that's not what we're doing here. To see that kind of interaction was just phenomenal for teachers to see. I think that one of the things we do need more of, staffing is always an issue educationally. I think more training, more understanding, but in Massachusetts specifically, I can tell you that social emotional learning, huge buzzword right now. This is going to help. This is going to be best practice for a lot of students, maybe staffing, but at least the students.
And if I can, or not I can, I'm going to, it's clarified. When we talk about buzzwords, as Dr. Crowe just said, education and educators are really, really good of taking a concept or a construct and illegitimizing it very quickly. And what I mean by that is that we throw out social emotional as something that everybody knows and understands, when in truth is there is such a, like ASD, there is such a spectrum of understanding of what it truly means. So our fear as educators is that we'll take something as important as social emotional development and social emotional learning, and we will trivialize it very quickly. And the side note on that is beware of any company that goes out and tells you they have the answer for whatever, because as Dr. Crowe knows, and I know very well, that is not true. So I just wanted to put a little... Yes, very true. Okay, so we now have the bookends. And I'm looking, I apologize, I'm looking at the back of you to see whether who would like to go and answer this question of what's become clear from your perspective.
So, I came into all of this first as a roboticist, basically, as an engineer. And as we started to develop both the robot as well as the curriculum, I was initially primarily working with researchers, and most of my interactions with people on the spectrum were in lab settings, which is awkward unto itself. And then also I kind of realized later, in a lot of cases, initially I felt like autism was kind of a blocky thing, but later I realized a lot of the initial studies I kind of found my way into being able to observe, they had been kind of tested through and categorized because the study was looking for a very specific narrow type of person. And as I've had the fortune of being able to go into classrooms where we've implemented Milo and really interact with people in more natural a setting as a school classroom is, I've really gotten to understand to your point, how individual, everyone is an individual, whether they're on the spectrum or not. And to that end, there's a lot of variety, and it's really helped me think through, I know there's like learning styles essentially, and so largely where we've had success is where, as we've been able to add more learning reinforcement kind of methods and techniques, we've been able to broaden the scope of kids we can reach. And to your point, we don't claim that this is a cure-all or that it's even right for every student. And the reason we've been so focused on public schools especially is both accessibility and because in a public school setting, there will likely be a high enough concentration of kids that will be able to help a number of them. And so as we've done that, it's been really cool to kind of see the variety of kids we've been able to work with. And I lost my next point.
So we'll come back there. Sure.
So in Canada, most children with ASD do attend school. And why do they attend school? Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, to learn a variety of skills, cognitive skills, social skills. So the work we're doing with my team, we're looking at how technology can help these kids master these skills, both social skills and cognitive skills as well. And we do work in schools. I think that's one of the great advantages. We do work in schools because that's, social skills integration, it happens in schools. And I hope we're going to be to show some of the results because Mike told me I could show some brief videos that we have and pictures and stuff. But for a child with ASD, school can be a very scary place sometimes. And we found out with some of the experiments that we did put in place that robots can help. And basically what we're doing, we're trying to study that, what makes it so magical, what makes it magical for kids. But we're pushing that magic so kids can learn to write, to read, and be motivated to read and write, not only to be better readers and writers and interested in science and a variety of things, but to be more, to do it on their own after the robot is gone. So there's lots of possibilities there.
So let's stay with discussing some of the work that you're doing. So what does the future look like? I know that those are some of the things that you're working on currently, but what does it look like 3, 5, maybe 7 years from now?
What do you mean?
Yes, please.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I'm hoping that from, in a few years, robots will be more accessible and more kids in schools will have them because nowadays, especially the now robot that we have is expensive and very few schools have both the technical and financial resources to have it. So it's and ideally eventually to have one at home as well. Why not? When we see some of the results that we've achieved in 1 year, I'm thinking it would be great if our parents with a kid with ASD would have one robot at home. Less scary, and they do talk more to robots. We don't know exactly why yet, and so I agree with our colleague from Toronto that there's lots to understand, and we're really trying to study that magic, what makes it so magical. Why, when even the robot is not there, they're still working hard on reading, writing, because they're looking forward for the next visit of the robot at school. So it makes school much more interesting for them. So I'm hoping in the near future that could be more robots in school. But not only robots, humans are also important. So I think it's a combination of both as well, because kids interact more with, we found out is that kids interact more with each other when the robot is there. So it's not only that they do interact with the robot, they also become better interactive with other human beings as well, which is something we'd like as well. I don't know if it's the case with your kid.
And yes,
So slightly different, but same question in terms of vision. As a parent, what are your best hopes for your child? I mean, what do you want to see as a result of his formal learning and et cetera? What's the best hope that you have? What's the vision for your child?
so I think playing off the answer in the last question, one of the biggest challenges we have is that my son has an aide in school and in summertime, and they're different. They're different people that he has to acclimate to. And these children almost universally thrive on routine. Robots and technology can provide that routine. If he had a robot at home with him, if he would have a robot that was a persistent character in his universe, it would go a long way to making transitions better, making the school year better, not having to have drama every time we changed a grade level. You know, we have to get him acclimated to a whole new set of humans. If he had the same robot or a simple,
Scary moments every time.
it takes away that. I can focus on the education he has to get that year, or the students, or his peer relationships, which is the hard part. So, there.
No, I think it's beautiful. Before I have Dr. Crowe and Dr. Matthews respond, I want to kind of get back to both the Now and Milo. How have either or both of you seen what was just described as that transition piece? How have you seen the Now and Milo assist with that transition when children change from either whether it's during the instructional year into the summer, or whether it's from an elementary experience to a middle school experience? How have the two of you seen that with your respective products?
I can't, we can only see you partially, so I'm not sure. Are you asking me first?
No, I'm going to let Now and Milo speak, and then I'll come back to Dr. Matthews. I've got another question for you and also Dr. Crowe. But
Okay.
so and I apologize. Let me rephrase that. So how have you seen Now and Milo assist with that transition to create consistency with students, with ASD learners?
Yeah, and okay, so I actually kind of recaptured the point I lost, and it's relevant to this. One of the things that I've seen and witnessed visiting certain classrooms, and we have a charter school in Dallas that we work with, and because they're basically our neighbors, it's one of the places I get to visit most frequently. And one of the things I've been able to see with some of the kids we're working with is as they've taken to the curriculum and learned self-regulation and other social and emotional skills, both from what I've been able to see directly and talking to their teachers and in some cases parents, they've been able to kind of start learning more outside, not just our curriculum, but generally their education is accelerating. And then on top of that, this school specifically pairs all and any special ed kids with a mainstream student as well, to kind of give them a buddy, if you will. But once they brought Milo in, a lot of these kids, from what I've both seen and was told, basically had a lot more friends very quickly, and there were a lot of mainstream kids who were, interested in the robot and almost jealous that they didn't get to use it and things like that. And so, ignoring the curriculum and all the other positive impacts we've had, just having the robot there is so intriguing to so many kids, and these are elementary school kids I'm talking about, that it's kind of given these students individually a starting point where other kids do want to come talk to them, and as their social skills are improving, they're being able to develop more friendships, and so that's been a really incredible kind of side effect. And so the transition then in some of these cases, these kids are also, for the first time, transitioning into mainstream classes, especially some of the kids who were much lower functioning when we started working with them.
That's great. Dr. Karsenti?
Maybe I'll let our colleague.
All right, Dr. Matthews, you're put on the spot here. Have you seen in any of your research where robotics, and again, we were talking about now in Milo, but in your research, have you seen where robotics has assisted with transitions, albeit during the instructional year of summer, and or from one level of education to the next level?
Yeah, in our research, it's been more from one phase of the day into the next phase of the day. We only enter schools and centers once a week or so for about 3 months. Yes, I do, and I'm listening to all my fellow panelists answer, and it's very interesting because one of the questions parents always ask us is that how does the inclusion of robotic design in my child's day, how is that going to affect their human interactions afterwards? And for the most part, as it's been cited a number of times, we know that whatever practice they're getting out of the robotic interaction is being very helpful for promoting interactions with other humans, which is great. And just as a quick aside, the cameras drop down over your notes, and I am not trying to set it up. Thank you. Just, I don't want to be distracted. I'm very easy.
No, it's a good feedback. Thank you.
So I would say that, yes, on the one hand, we've seen the benefits of the robot as a bit of a reward, as a goal, as a reason to reflect the child and move on. I'm going to cite one of my colleagues at the University of Alberta who had just brought in the now with both typically neurotypical and neuroatypical in terms of development children in the hospital settings when they had to get vaccines or blood work done, and the robots were certainly enough of an interesting distraction to assist in that as well. So it's, I don't think, as we've said already, it's exclusive to children with ASD, but certainly, as we've also said, this kind of magical inclusion of a humanoid robot. For my other research side, I have had a number of graduate students working on interface design, not with humanoid-shaped robots, but with phone apps designed for young teenagers with ASD. As we can imagine that, the camera's dropping down again. Thank you. Hopefully enough might be happening. But so how do you take something like the human robot aspect of this kind of technology and put it into perhaps a more appropriate or age-appropriate kind of product? And so I've had some graduate students looking at that question, and how does something like a phone app, how can you try and put that magic that we see in humanoid robotics into something like a phone app that would assist in many same ways about transitions, about inclusivity in new spaces, and so on and so forth. So those questions are also very interesting to us. So not focusing simply on shape of that kind of artificial intelligence and robotic design, but also trying to figure out what is it that is magical, and how can it be translated for other populations, other age groups. As we know, there's a lot of research often being done on children with autism spectrum disorder, or autism more broadly, and then there's this really wonderful population, the young teenager, or the teenager, and then of course the young adult. And how can a lot of our research that we're doing at this stage be shared for other groups? And so I would say that, yes, we can see how useful it is in terms of transitions. Yes, I think it is. There is something magical that's kind of exclusive to human, the humanoid shape in robots. But I also like the idea that how do you continue in other forms of inclusive design that might help, up all the way up to adulthood in the question of ASD.
No, great.
That question properly.
No, great. Thanks, Dr. Matthews.
So-
Dr. Karsenti.
Well, the idea of transitions from our experience is that it's very scary for kids, but not only transitions, but sometimes to events or things that were not planned. They do like routines, but those events happen all the time in schools. So one of the goals of the teachers we work with, and I'm glad you mentioned that people in the field are very, very important. So the teachers we work with, she was there all the time, and she played a key role in our project. And basically, she's trying to better prepare them for those new events that happen all the time, because otherwise they react sometimes in a very, very sometimes scary way. Sometimes they don't react, but you can never predict that. And using the robot really helps prepare those kids for those events. In Canada, we do have snowstorms, and where the school is, there are approximately 4 to 5 days a year where there's no school because there's so much snow. But the kids hate that, because why? Because the routine is, it's not as it's supposed to be. So the following day, the robot would be in class and talk to them about the snowstorm, what did you do? And it makes things easier. And now what the teacher did, she pushed it a bit further. She sends a video at home during the snowstorm. Now she works on her, still day off, supposedly, but she sends a video of the robot talking about this. So it makes all the kids feel better, even during that transition day or that new event day. So robots can really help. It's not magical all the time. Sometimes it doesn't work, but it does help. And it's like a link for them with the school, with the events, and it's someone that kids are not afraid to talk to or listen to. And it's very strange how effective it is, and it's the teacher doing all the work behind the robot, but still, for kids, it's really the robot who's, helping them.
So, Dr. Crowe, we have a different type of learner, even counting ASD learners as learning differently. What is it about technology? What is it about autism? What is it about the combination of those two, from both a practical as well as kind of a visionary approach? What do you see as an educator?
The question you asked before about what do I see in 3 to 5 years, I think you may answer that, because I think that we as educators have to be very bold right now. I think we have to take giant steps. I think we have to be open-minded about the potential that technology holds, specifically robots. And I'm not sure I'm going to answer your question by doing this, but I'm going to go a different pathway.
You're a superintendent. You can answer any way you want.
I know they like to bully you. I think that one of the things that's occurred to me and that I saw firsthand in the past 6 months when we've been talking about Milo is that I spent a lot of money the previous year on infusing technology into our district. It's a district that had virtually no technology when I arrived 3 years ago, and we stockpiled money until we could get this infusion. And one of the things that happens, of course, is it goes for robotics and all the the STEM stuff in high school and middle school. And we were leaving out elementary kids. So now we do Legos, and now we do some other. And what we realized very quickly are the students who gravitated immediately to the robots were our special populations. So we knew there was something there long before we even heard about Milo. But as soon as I heard about Milo, I was immediately hooked. And this was on just a TV ad, by the way. It was like a news clip. And I said, I have to get some of those because I know what I can do with those. I think we have to be visionary. We have to be bold. We have to convince school boards that this is what we need to do so that all students have access. And then I think we have to make sure that the staff has the training they need to feel comfortable. My vision is that within 3 to 5 years, not even 3 probably, is that I would like to see a lending library of sorts. We have one-to-one initiatives, and kids get their laptop or their iPad or their tablet. Why wouldn't we provide what that individual student needs, whether it's called Milo or not, it doesn't matter, but whatever that particular student needs. And again, everybody should have an IEP.
So letting that question be somewhat. We'll let that question be a little bit rhetorical so you can answer it. Why not? Why wouldn't that vision be realized?
Politics, policy, governance, politics. People will talk about how much money it costs. My contention is, and the last district I was in, actually, we had launched a concept of bringing a revenue stream into the district by Milo, because we were going to develop our own autism program that was second to none in the state. We would have been the first one in Massachusetts. I think that we have to take bold steps like that. And my argument was, if you don't want to talk about the individual students and the efficacy for that student, then let's talk about the economics, because I know you'll talk about the economics. And that's probably a little harsh, but I think it's a reality.
That is real.
It's a reality in Massachusetts. You know, you'll keep hearing about the rising special ed costs. And as superintendent, I've sat at many board meetings and said, you need to stop. You need to stop talking about special ed. It's education for all. And if we are going to do all, then we have to do all.
Dr. Karsenti.
Yeah, I completely agree with your approach, and I know there's a financial challenge that is really there for any school district across North America. But there's also a human challenge there. Any school district, especially in Canada, IT people, we keep the IT out of the kids' hands, and I think it's a wrong thing to do. IT should be in the classroom. It should not be in an office locked somewhere where kids, eventually have access to it, or sometimes never have access to it. And many school boards, they do have many, resources that are not in the classrooms, and I think it's really sad to see all that. What are they for if they're not for kids in the classroom? And not only special education, but any kid in the classroom. And I think that's where we have to go. We have to make sure that technology, is in the classroom with the kids, the learners, with the teachers, and all that. Not in some office or some special lab that people rarely go to. So finance is an issue, but there's also a human factor where there's a lot of resistance. Sometimes from teachers, sometimes from IT people, and sometimes from other people as well.
To be kind, we'd like to think in terms of reluctance rather than resistance. But the truth is, we still have not bridged this chasm between learners knowing more about technology than the adults. But what they don't know is how to leverage that technology as a learning tool. And I think that's what both Richard and yourself represent, is breakthrough technology that is really to come alongside, that can amplify, can accelerate, can enhance learning. But as Dr. Crowe said, the educators are still a bit slow. And I'll just like it to be kind, reluctant rather than resistant. Because once their comfort level, their competence level starts to increase, then they certainly will embrace that. So I wanted to ask, let's turn back to our resident parental expert. In terms of your journey, what are some of the challenges that you have come across, or others that you have been involved with respect to schools, in terms of meeting your son's IEP goals or their IEP goals? What are some of those challenges that you face as a parent?
Boy, that's a little bit more.
So we'll say, first of all, raise your right hand, repeat after me. I'm sorry, Senator, I have no recollection.
I really don't. The challenges. So we just don't have enough technology for these kids, period. And it's not the right technology. We don't have this is probably not the right room for it, but we don't have the expertise. I mean, I'm very lucky. I know how to use the internet. I'm very lucky. My son's a native coder. He's been coding since he could type. And I could find the places that would benefit him the most, and they're not in school. They're in the library. I drive my son to the library to visit these ladies because they have nanobots and robots that he can engage with. They give us the tools we need. Schools haven't been able to do it, so that's my challenge with schools, is that they can't meet our needs. I don't know how else that's as candid as I can be about it. Schools just don't do the job.
It's good. You're coming with me to Washington. We're going to go down and have a conversation.
One step further than resistance.
Yes. We find ways to get the tools we need as parents, and that's what the challenge is. It's if you don't know how to look, you don't get them.
Appreciate it. And I think what Dr. Crowe and I would want all of our parents that are listening and or will be viewing this to know is that, our commitments are to all of our children, not to just those or these children, but all children. And it's one of the greatest challenges that superintendents face is to go get the resources and be granted the permission to spend dollars and expend resources where they're needed. And it becomes a very contentious battle when you're working with not only parents but community, business community, et cetera. So to that end, I'm going to ask Dr. Karsenti and Richard about how do businesses partner? How do businesses like yours partner with schools and school districts or other entities that are providing services, albeit public libraries or other places, to assist, to help, to provide the necessary tools to move children, especially children with ASD, forward?
mean, it's been challenging. It took years and years of kind of, I guess, finding the right people and developing the right messaging. And for the first several years, we really had to figure out how to go out and find what I've been classifying as kind of early adopter schools and school districts and people who are willing to do something different than they've been doing. And that was tough, but we're now at a point where I think we have enough robots in the field and enough success stories where it's not, here's a couple and it's anecdotal, and success stories in a bunch of different categories. Because to everyone else's point, we're dealing with public systems, for us primarily public schools, and so depending who you're talking to, the messaging, the right messaging is not necessarily about the actual benefits to an individual or what an individual may need, but an economic argument. And I think one of the ways we've been able to overcome, at least before we had some of, or such a broad range of successes, is some of our early successes where we were able to show that because these students were helped and were able to start making real progress, that the economic burden on the system was actually reduced over time. And if they make the investment up front and it's something new and it's different and they don't know which budget to pull it from, but once we've helped figure that out, as these students all, as a lot of them start making more progress than they ever have, and in some cases such that they're moving from full-time special ed or even specialty centers that are costing these districts, tens of thousands to $100,000 a year, and you can help these kids move into mainstream classes and things like that, the economic burden is significantly reduced, and you're doing that while helping them really work with their students and benefit their students in the way that their mission really, their stated mission is to educate everyone, to your point. And that's the goal. And it's just figuring out how to help them see and understand that it's possible that making this investment can be a help, can be really positive to a number of students and consequently actually reduce costs as kind of a side effect. And,
Well, from an education point of view, I believe that IT companies should get feedback from users when they're, coming up with new things, and sometimes they don't. And R&D should be closely linked to users, and schools are power users in technologies. That said, you should also, not see schools as, ways to make profits, but also understand the financial challenges that all schools and school districts are facing as well. I see sometimes schools are paying more for IT stuff than we get at Best Buy and other places like that. And I find it very unfair, because of all the legislations and politics and all that. So companies have to understand, it's the future of a country, of other countries and all that. So I think they have to come up with ways to make it cheaper for schools and to have access to all these technologies.
Very good, thank you. Last year in the United States, we spent over $265 billion in the area of autism. $265 billion. And we look at where we are in terms of moving the needle for those 1.3 million children that are in American public schools presently. So a lot of heavy lifting that still needs to be done, a lot smarter investment with products that are proven and are very effective and efficient. So I'm going to open it in just a moment to the floor for questions of our panelists. But before I do, I want to set the stage